Okay, we got some FL users in the house. Check it out. How many of you guys have installed the new FL Studio update? 20.8.4 is now out. This is a pretty crazy update. Let me tell you guys why this is a crazy update. I know they have the frequency shifter. They updated 3x OSC. FL Studio Mobile's updated. I don't use that personally. The one that really caught my eye is this: Apple Silicon support. If you have an M1 laptop, now FL Studio is completely native on the M1. That's crazy. How many of you guys have an M1 and have tested this out? I have not had a chance to really stress test it, but I did install FL Studio natively on my M1 MacBook just to try it out. And I did a test. I have two laptops. A lot of you guys already know. I have a 16-inch MacBook Pro, fully spec'd out, 8 terabyte hard drive, 8 core, 2.4 gigahertz. It was like $5,000 or $6,000 when I bought it in 2019. And I have an M1 MacBook Pro. It's an 8 gigabyte of RAM. The normal one you buy in the store, I think it was like $1,300. I bought it in late 2020. So I've run tests on Ableton between the 16-inch and the M1, but Ableton is not native. Ableton runs on Rosetta 2. And it runs okay. It's fine. I haven't really stress tested it, but I did do a test with 2 sessions, and Ableton definitely runs better on my Intel than my M1, by far. Now, I took a session with FL Studio default synths and plugins, and I opened the same session on my 16-inch, and I opened the FL Studio session on my M1. I know this is not a very scientific test, but I'm just giving you guys my first thoughts. I started duplicating that synth, and I hit a limit on my Intel computer. I then took that session where I hit a limit on my Intel computer, and I brought it over to the M1 running in silicon mode, and no limit. And then I duplicated it more, no limit. I duplicated it more, no limit. Duplicated it more, no limit. Let me put it this way. FL Studio on silicon is dope. There's a lot of potential. I have a feeling that the M1X and FL Studio is going to be beastly, absolutely beastly. It just makes me really wish that Ableton would get on the silicon support so we could have the same performance because, you know, Ableton, I think we can all agree, has some performance CPU issues. I'm actually in communication with Ableton right now. I'm working with them on some of the issues I've run into with my workflow. FL Studio has M1 native support. As I was saying, I tried it and it smoked my Intel chip. That's on the plus side. Here's the downside. If you run FL Studio in M1 native silicon mode on an M1 computer, you cannot load any third-party plugins that are not already supported. That's a downside to using FL Studio in silicon mode. But if the cases where you need to use third-party, you can just switch it to Rosetta 2 mode and everything will work normally. I just feel like the future's bright for FL Studio now that we have silicon support. I just think that's fire. I may need to start running FL Studio on my M1 on the stream just to see how it does. But this is a W for ImageLine, man. Apple Silicon support. I just hope it's coming soon for Ableton. And here's another thing. I'm running my streaming software that I'm streaming to right now with this program called Ecamm Live, and it's M1 native. I have the screen running. I have a camera plugged in. I have a screen capture card plugged in. I have 2 other cameras plugged in, and the shit never heats up. The fans never spin. The M1 computer, it's not optimized for most programs yet, but it is a good system. It's a good system. For $1,300, I'd consider it almost a budget system, and it runs phenomenally. Now, for things like Ableton, I'm a power user, so it's not there yet with Rosetta. But once they upgrade all the silicon, wow. I'm looking forward to the M1X. They should be announcing that in November, it seems like. From their trends, it looks like in November they're going to do the 14 and the 16-inch M1X. Yeah, the M1X is going to be dope. We'll see how Rosetta 2 works with it. It should be pretty good. I'm definitely going to get it, and I will let you guys know once I get it how it compares with Ableton. I'm going to put everything on the M1X. I'm going to set it up like I'm going to start using it. I'm looking forward to no fan noise. I'm looking forward to smooth performance, all that. I'm really looking forward to that. But I will say, if any of you guys need a laptop now, the M1 is solid. It's pretty good. I'll say this. For Ableton, I'd still recommend an Intel, but if you're on FL, it looks like they're already supported, and more plugins every day are getting silicon support. Just wanted to bring that up.